it would be absolutely shocking if Phoenix makes the playoffs. To be clear, if they don't, that's a disastrous trade. Okay, it's a disastrous trade because you've given up what's going to be a lottery pick for 2 months of a player who's not. No matter how well she plays, you're almost certainly not getting to the playoffs. I think Breanna Stewart has quietly had an MVP caliber season.
Can we talk about that for 2 seconds?
Yeah, let's talk about that for a second.
I also agree.
Can you imagine if they got the first pick and they had Juju in LA? Like, that would be...
I can't even think about it. That is their only saving grace, honestly. Hey everyone, and welcome to Girls Trip. I'm Jordan Robinson, and we picked up Ryan Ruocco again for an episode because our teammate, Allie Clifton, is actually on a girls trip out of the country, which she so deserves, by the way. We love this for her. So we're taking over. We're taking over the episode. How are you, Ryan? Welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Jordan. I'm pumped with what you guys were able to do over All-Star Weekend. I wish I would have been able to be there with you. My, schedule with the 3-point contest didn't work out, but so cool for you guys, so cool for the show. To have the reception and response it did was awesome. And happy for Allie that she gets a little time off. So yeah, and pumped to be with you at a time where we're like kind of, you look up at the standings and you're like, oh my gosh, there's only how many games left in the regular season?
I know. How are we here already?
I know. It really is crazy. Like, especially there's such an appetite for this league now. And like, we just, I did Fever Links on Sunday on ABC. We had 2.52 million viewers for that game. Like, it's an unbelievable number. A few years ago, if you go back and you look at, New York, Vegas in the finals, which was a premier matchup, we had one game top 1 million. Okay. That's how, I believe it was just one game. That was in 2023. That's how much, growth we've had over the last few years. And it just, I say this as a premise to say, it just feels like, and I know there's a certain amount of expansion that's going to happen in the regular season as part of the CBA, and there's a cap on how much. But it just feels like obvious now that there should be more of a regular season when you look and you're like, wait, there's only 13 games left, 14 games left, depending on the team you look at. Doesn't that feel just insane that we're that close to the end of the regular season?
It really does. And it always feels like historically after All-Star, things go quick. Things are like, we almost automatically start talking about playoffs. But this feels like you're saying, I want more. Like, I want more of a cushion before we get to the playoffs because that's a whole different version. So 14 games, and especially how the W works when they're so compacted and they're so quick. Yeah. That is going to fly by, but that also makes us talk about these teams a little differently because it's all right. It's time to get serious. We've had some conversations at the beginning of the season. All right. People are trying to get feelers out there. All-Star hits. It's go time. What are the playoffs? What are those standings starting? And so that's where I kind of want to start. We travel around the league with you because you travel around the league. And like you said, you were at Minnesota for that matchup with the Indiana Fever, which, Ryan, might be one of the best games of the season so far.
Yes. Yeah.
That was crazy. Oh, my God.
I had so many people in the beginning of the game texting me, and some people who, would text me normally during games, and then other people who clearly this matchup was drawing them in, and they all were just like, this is unbelievable. Oh my gosh, this basketball is incredible. And I'm sure the coaches did not enjoy the defense that was not played in the first half. But no. But for the viewer and for me calling it, like, I think there was 6 minutes to go. There was either 4 minutes to go or 6 minutes to go in the first quarter, and was 21-21 already. And I was like, oh my gosh, just unbelievable. And I honestly think, like, I, you know, of I had a lot of takeaways from that game, but I honestly think both teams could come away from that game feeling really good. Let's start with the team who won the game, the Minnesota Lynx. They If you look up and down the standings, and the Lynx right now, as we talk on this day, they've won 10 in a row. They're in first place. They have a 3.5 game cushion over the Valkyries and Aces, who are tied for that second spot. If you look up and down the standings, I'd say the only team that really doesn't have a roster flaw or a hole that you're concerned about being a fatal flaw is Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
Every other roster has some deficiency that you're looking at and has to be accounted for. Doesn't mean it can't be overcome, right? Like we've seen the Aces didn't have a perfect roster last year, but they found a way to win. They have, maybe the greatest player of all time, right? And then they have a lot of other really good players and they have an incredible coach and they figured it out. So like no
Mm-hmm.
one's going to write them off regardless of a hole in their roster, right? But if you really look at the standings, the only team that you go up and down and you say, wow, that starting lineup fits flawlessly, and wow, they have depth, is Minnesota. And they kind of showed you that in that game, right? They showed you the value of their depth. Olivia Miles starts it out red hot. Then all of a sudden, when they needed buckets, Olivia had a quieter second half. When they needed buckets at the end of the third quarter, it was Fee. Then throughout the entire second half, and especially the end of the fourth, it was Courtney. There was some key rebounds from Nia Coffey flagging balls down, and Maya Caldwell and Kayla McBride, didn't even have a great game, was a little hobbled at times, and still,
Mm-hmm.
hit some big shots. And so my biggest takeaway from that was like looking at Minnesota and being like, you're the clear favorites. Like you could be beat, especially in a 3-game series or a 5-game series. No one's going to say, "Oh, the Aces don't have a chance," or or Indiana doesn't have a chance, or the Liberty don't have a chance, or whoever it might be. But Minnesota, I don't know how you feel, Jordan. Like watching that game and just the depth of their roster supplanted for me, like or further affirmed for me that they are definitely the favorites.
Absolutely. And, the matchup was the number one offense in Indiana versus the top two defense in Minnesota. And when you said there wasn't a lot of defense being played, because Minnesota is also such a great offense. And when you have weapons like Olivia Miles, 28 points, 11 for 14, it was an efficient 28 points. You said Courtney Williams, 27 points, 5 assists. Napheesa Collier, remember her? 18 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, almost a triple-double. We were talking about Minnesota being the favorite and being kind of the surprising favorite at the beginning of the season, and all of that was without Napheesa. Now that Fee is back, there is no crack in this. You have the best coach in the league with this most talented roster, the rookie of the year. And I thought about that, a series. Yes, they can be beat, but multiple times can you beat them? I don't know. And that's what it comes down for me, is being that clear favorite. They have the defense, they have the offense. When you put it together, it's lights out. I don't see anyone beating them.
I mean, I think that's the appropriate take. It would take an extraordinary performance, or something weird happening, right? Because what they had lacked over the last couple of years was a true point guard, and Courtney did her best, and now not only do they have a true point guard, but they have an all-world point guard who's been an MVP candidate this year, in Olivia Miles, and she is. I mean, Cheryl Reeve, and we've talked about it a little bit on the pod. She just raves about Olivia, and she has so empowered her. And Minnesota's defensive schemes also, I think, and Olivia's commitment to get better on that end as well, have allowed them to not be hurt by, her, weaknesses on that side of the ball, or her need for growth on that side of the ball. But like, we were talking about with Fee the other day, like they haven't even spent that much time yet together. Like that pick and roll is going to be filthy when they start to get those
Right.
reps. Fee was talking about how in practice she learned, like, I always got to have my hands up because, like, I was dropping balls because I wasn't ready for her passes, just because that's the way Olivia plays, and so I mean, their only flaw over the last few years is now a massive strength. And also, Natasha Howard has played an incredible role on that team this year. Um, she'll lose some of her pick and roll run, obviously, with Fee coming back, but she still always knows how to fill in the gaps and is a stout defender as well. And I also think it may not be as present as it was last year, but this is still a group that came as close to winning a title as you could in 2024. Had it controversially ripped away at the end of game 5. Then last year responded with the best record in the league in the regular season. So I still think they have this hunger, this burn to finish off what they weren't able to in 24. All those ingredients tell me if they stay healthy, to your point, Jordan, they're going to be really hard to beat.
Really hard to beat. I know. We
Yeah.
mentioned I talked about all those stats, and I didn't even mention the all-star starter in Natasha Howard also having 13 points. She's also on that team. Now on the other side of that game was Indiana Fever, who, again, coming into this game, Kelsey Mitchell is just on a whole otherworldly run. She finished the game with 37 points. My God, what a performance. My favorite moment from the game was not even the action. It was Olivia Miles talking to her saying, "You are so tough." And like she said, this is kind of her welcome to the W moment, having to guard Kelsey Mitchell because this is the first time that she's had to do it. And I mean, that is on full display. Caitlin, would she almost have a triple-double, 19 points, 10 assists. The Fever are the number one offense. They showed that. They showed how efficient and how they're able to score in various ways. Even though they took the loss, you think that this is something they should still feel pretty good about?
I do. If you look at especially what Kelsey and Caitlin have done over the last few weeks, like it's almost like every game there's a new historical note. Like Kelsey's on this run where she's on the brink of tying Asia's single season record for most consecutive 20-point games. She's also shooting an absurd percentage during this run, while she's doing that. Caitlin just had the first 5-game stretch in the history of the WNBA where a player averaged 29 points and 9 assists. And it reminds me, and then Aaliyah Boston keeps just doing her thing as this steady, solid, consistent producer on both sides of the ball. And it reminds me a little of the way it felt with the three of them at the end of Caitlin's rookie year, when they kind of found it. They figured out how to play together. And all of a sudden they were incredibly difficult and dangerous going into the playoffs. They ended up losing to Connecticut in that first round. But it reminds me of that, except for they're all better now. Kelsey is as good as she was 2 years ago. She is better now. Caitlin, as good as she was 2 years ago, she is better now. Aaliyah Boston is better now.
So much better.
I've talked to all of them recently about, their connection and their confidence in each other. And first of all, they've all talked about just like the incredible vibe they have going as a team right now, but also the three of them and how interconnected they feel. And then we were talking with Kelsey and Aaliyah the other day, and we said, "Do you ever think about like, hey, if us three are playing this way, is this enough? Is this enough for like a championship?" And they're like, "Yeah." Not only do we think it, we talk about it. We know, like us three playing at this level. And they were like, "Of course we have other contributors too, but like if the three of us are playing at this level, which those are 3 top 10 players in the league," they're like, "Yeah, we know we have enough." And so I say all this to say, my takeaways from that game were they had a tough turnaround. They had, and this is the league, right? But it's just when you get into the playoffs, you're on even footing. So you account for these things when you're projecting ahead. And Minnesota, to be clear, would still be the favorites, no doubt, in a series with Indiana. But where I'd be encouraged with if I was Indiana is You had played late at Portland 2 days before. You got into Minnesota at 6 a.m. the day before the game, and then had an afternoon game, right? You could tell, even though Caitlin was still productive and had a pretty good floor game overall, she clearly didn't have the same verve she had the previous 5 games energy wise, right? She was also a little sick, so that's part of it. But like you could tell, right? There was times in the third quarter and fourth quarter where we're watching Indiana across the board gassed. Like they looked like
Yes, I did
so
see that.
gassed, right?
They
Like where it was
looked
like, oh my
gassed.
gosh, they look gassed. And yet, this is what I'd be encouraged about. They fought. They showed incredible heart. They cut it to 2 and had the ball with under 2 minutes to go after they had been down 15 and looked dead, in the
Mhm.
late third quarter. And on top of that, I think they also have something with the final 5 they played with Sophie's spacing, Michaela Timpson, how well she's been playing, her bounciness, her switchability on D, and then their big
Yes.
3. So like, look, they're not. Their ability to defend Minnesota is going to be an issue because Indiana has struggled on defense all season long. But
Mhm.
I think that 5, the way they closed, and then also the idea that, like, hey, they were a little exhausted going into the game. If I'm Indiana, I'm saying, yeah, like we lost, but we can feel good about how we were able to compete, and we can't wait for our next crack. And if I'm Minnesota, I'm thinking, I'm very comfortable. I'm going to be able to put up 100 on Indiana's defense. So I think
Yes.
there's comfort. There's things you can be positive about for both sides coming out of that game. I really believe.
Yes. Well, like we talked about, the final score was 108-100. That was a high scoring game. But this was the first meeting. I was looking at the schedule because as we start thinking about playoff contention in Indiana, as we're recording this Wednesday morning, they're sitting at 5. So they, of all teams, would love to have that home court advantage in those top 4 spots. So they have some work to do to just get one more spot up. They have a very interesting schedule coming up, but the last 2 games of the final season is a back-to-back with Minnesota. We're going to get this again in like a series format. And selfishly, I'm so excited for this, Ryan.
It's going to be amazing to watch finish. And we're doing those games. We're doing one of those games. We're doing the first game of that on September 22nd. And what's going to be interesting too is like, has Minnesota clinched the top seed? Like,
Yeah,
where
do
are
they
they at with
rest?
it?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Because and there's like incredible variability to the standings in general. Like when you look at, let's take Washington out of it because Washington, although they're red hot and poised to make the playoffs, they're a team who is going to be getting their first taste, right? Like I don't think anyone's going into their season is a success regardless. No one's going into the playoffs thinking Washington's going to compete for a championship this year, right? Like that's not where they're at in their timeline. But if you look at the other teams, like the other 7, I don't
It's
think
so
there's
tough.
anyone, right? Like
It's
you're
so tough. And that top 7, week after week, no matter the variation, I'm like, man, this is a gauntlet of
right.
teams.
And so you could see almost anybody losing or winning in the first round, right? Like right now, the Liberty are the 7 seed. Like if they played the Aces in the first round, which is how it would line up today, no one's looking at that and saying, oh, it's definitely a Vegas win, even if they're favored.
Right.
Like
Oh
Indiana,
my
Dallas,
gosh.
if they were matched up, Atlanta, Golden State, like the only matchup right now you say comfortably if it ended the way it does today is Minnesota, Washington. But like, it's just, I say this all to say every single one of these games is going to be really important because these teams are separated by so few games. And I think they're all, pretty much vulnerable to each other with very few exceptions. And yeah, it's 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 going to be fun to watch finish. And the
It
way
really is.
Indiana's been playing, like they've just had, oh my gosh, they've just been playing beautiful basketball on the offensive end. Their rhythm's been just incredible. And we have a lot of them coming up on our air. And it's a fun time to get to watch them like this. And then, Minnesota has a tougher schedule too right now. So they're going to get to do what they did on Sunday, right? And get to to have these performances against some of the better teams in the league. And yeah, Vegas has shown signs, as Chelsea Gray was talking about, like, oh, looking like themselves. I think Breanna Stewart has quietly had an MVP caliber season.
Can we talk about that for 2
Yeah,
seconds?
let's
Because
talk about
I
that for a second. Yeah.
also agree. I think
Yeah.
that we have been talking about and I say we, just WNBA people. We've talked
Yes.
about the Liberty kind of having, and what I describe as a kiddie roller coaster type of season, because it's these little dips and waves as a team, and they still don't have Sabally. We still don't know what a full strength Liberty team is going to look like. But Stewie has been the constant. Over all the chaos and all of the people in and out of lineups, Stewie has quietly been this MVP level season. What have you liked about her game this year, and how has it kept the Liberty afloat during all of this transition?
Jordan, you're so right. Like, I mean, I honestly think there are times where we underrate or underappreciate Breanna Stewart. And some of that comes because of the way Asia ascended over the last couple of years to the clear number one player in the league, right? Because like
Yeah.
early on in their careers, it was who's better, Stewie or Asia. And, they were battling for the MVP every single season. Um, and those were like really great basketball debates that you could make a cogent argument for either player, right? In those given years of who was the MVP and why. And over the last couple of years, Asia Wilson has ascended into her own category amongst all players in the league, right? Like, I think it'd be hard to argue against that when you look at what she's done over the last few years. Because of that, I do think at times we underrate Stewie, who is the greatest winner in the history of college basketball and
Yes.
one of the greatest winners, performers in the history of the WNBA. And this year, she's feeling healthier. Like one of the best performances I've ever seen live in my life was her last year in that game 3 loss to Phoenix when she had a bad knee injury. It didn't look like she was going to be able to play. And she just poured her heart and soul into that game 3, nearly single-handedly carried them to victory in that game at Phoenix. She scored 30 points, played 35 minutes, had 9 rebounds, and was really not supposed to even be playing that game. And one of the things she did in that game that she's doing now too, Jordan, asking the question about it, what impresses me is she got to the line a lot. And I think what we've seen this year is like, if the offense is choppy, if things aren't rhythmic, if things aren't working, she's like, all right, I'm gonna get to the line. I'm just gonna find a way to make it happen. And if you look at her numbers this year, like, I think right now the favorite for MVP is definitely Asia. I think Kelsey Mitchell is absolutely a candidate. I think Caitlin Clark is absolutely a candidate. I think Olivia Miles is absolutely a candidate. I think Paige is a candidate. I think Stewie is certainly a candidate. And if I was voting today, I'd give serious thought to Breanna Stewart having that number 2 spot behind Asia. That's how impactful she's been for a Liberty team that, as you said, Jordan, they really haven't had a lot of steadiness. She's been the one steady piece.
Yeah, and I'm just looking at her stats from the past couple years and comparing them to where we are in the season. When she did win MVP in 2023, she was at 23 points per game. Right now, she's at 21.4. Like, this is kind of what we're saying, is that it's right there. And she's been in the top 3 MVP voting since 2020. That is Stewie. And I was just talking about this the other day with Asia, and something that we do a little bit what you were talking about of we're just used to it. We're just used to the greatness. So when Stewie goes off for 30, when Asia scores 36, we're like, oh, that's just what they do. But we really need to take a second, take a beat, and realize what we're witnessing. This is greatness. This is Stewie, Asia. They are at their primes battling with really good teams and really good franchises that we may never see again. And we need to like bottle that up a little bit. And so I found myself just taking more stock of when I'm watching the best players in the world doing what they do best. And I think we all need to do that. So let's give some more respect for Stewie. That's all I want to say.
You know what? I love that approach in general. And I also think like, I mean, just in life in general, I'm like a very anti zero sum game person. Like, and I hate when we feel like, in order to celebrate one player, we need to knock down another. Now
Right.
we can always have sports is supposed to have debate and whatever, and that's cool. That's good. We should do that. And quite frankly, the W needs even more of that, I think, kind of like what Candace has talked about, which we've referenced before. But like this idea that you can't say Paige Beckers is awesome at the same time you say Caitlin Clark is awesome, or you can't say Kelsey and Caitlin, or you can't say Asia and Stewie, or whatever. It's like, what are we doing? Like, they're all
What are we
awesome,
doing? Everyone's
like,
great.
yeah, exactly. Like, so, and anyone who knows ball knows that, like if you're sitting there trying to twist yourself in an argument about, why this performance isn't really okay, like you're probably telling on yourself, and people who know ball would know that, and like, and too often in the WNBA space, like it becomes about more than just what you're seeing with your eyes on the floor, and anybody who's watching Breanna Stewart this year would know, oh yeah, she's absolutely balling out. And to your point, like when her team really needs it, she's also, she's at almost a career high in field goal percentage. The only year she shot it better from the floor was her second year in the league. And this is with, for the first however many games of the season, her three was broken, and she started to find that again. And yet she's still so efficient on the whole. Like I like giving, and Stewie is one of the great competitors, like she's an incredible competitor. So yeah, like Jordan, I'm glad you went there, because Stewie deserves those flowers.
That wasn't even on the rundown, you guys. We just had to pause and just give Stewie her flowers.
Yeah.
But I feel like this does transition to the next thing I want to talk to you about, because ball knowers, Kelsey Plum is at one of the top of the list. And this trade that the Sparks made for Kelsey Plum to Phoenix came through very late on my West Coast time. So I know you probably woke up to it the next day, but
I did.
I was a little shocked, but here's how it went down. Phoenix gets Kelsey Plum. The Sparks get Monique Akoa Makani, a 2027 first round pick, and a 2028 second round pick. Now, we've already seen Kelsey Plum just fit in with the Phoenix Mercury and it's like, Ka, I know you. AT, I know you. We've all been on the Olympics. Let's just hoop. And she scores 20 points in 20 minutes, and all Sparks fans' hearts were breaking across the county. I think I heard it through my window. It was very sad. But this is a very tricky situation that I want you to shed some light on, because Kelsey Mitchell, rumors were coming out that she wasn't going to re-sign with the Sparks. So the Sparks are in a very difficult position, because now, are we going to let her walk for nothing in a couple months? Or are we going to try to get something, anything for her in return while she's still on the roster? This is an all-star caliber player being moved mid-season. That doesn't typically happen, but I feel like the Sparks were in a little bit of a pickle. What did you think?
I think you're totally right, Jordan. It's interesting because we brought it up on the pod quite a few weeks ago as something to watch, and it was before I had even heard kind of definitively that it could happen or that Kelsey would want out or whatever. But I think it was pretty clear Kelsey was not going to re-sign in LA. And if you're the Sparks, you absolutely have to move her once that's the case. And too often in this league, I think teams can be stubborn about that or falsely hopeful. And first with the LA side of things, I think they couldn't have asked for a better return for where they're at right now with their franchise, right? They need young building block pieces. They are going to acquire those, or the best way to acquire them, especially when it comes to the finances of it all in this new system, is through the draft. They're going to be a lottery team this year. They're not going to make the playoffs. It would be stunning if they make the playoffs. Okay.
So much has to happen for them and to all the teams above them. It's a long shot. Yeah.
They're 5 games back, right? Yeah. So in order to climb, that was going to be unlikely. And even if you do, what is that doing for you? Right? You're just you're going to make it and lose in the first round. So they are better off kind of bottoming out. I'm not overtly tanking the rest of the year. As we saw, they're not going to do that. But taking a great player off their roster is going to help them bottom out this year, which is going to help their lottery odds this year, right? Then Phoenix's pick is also going to be a lottery pick. Phoenix is not going to make the playoffs. It would take a remarkable basketball miracle for them to be able to make up the 6 games they are back from the 8th seed with 14 games to play. I feel very comfortable saying it would be absolutely shocking if Phoenix makes the playoffs. Okay. And we'll deal with why would Phoenix take this risk in a second. So
right.
If you look at that, if you're the Sparks, you essentially help make your own lottery pick better in theory, because you're probably going to win less without Kelsey. And you just got another lottery pick because Phoenix's pick is going to be a lottery pick.
Okay, can I ask a question? Because we know that for the W, it's the last 2 years combined. And Phoenix, they were in the finals last year.
Yeah.
Does that hurt the Sparks' odds of getting a lottery pick, even though Phoenix was not great this year?
Yes, it does hurt it hurts the Sparks' odds with the Phoenix pick. So if you are, and that actually I think is a window into why Phoenix did this deal. Mm-hmm. So if you're LA, to me, that deal, no brainer. Kelsey's going to leave anyway. You just helped your lottery odds with your own pick for this year. And you also are getting another pick that is almost certainly going to be a lottery pick in Phoenix's. Now, where in the lottery will those picks fall? Well, it's a 2-year, it's your 2-year aggregate record, right? That determines the odds. So for LA, last year they weren't good. They missed the playoffs last year too. So their odds are going to be a little bit better, right? Look at the other teams that aren't in the playoffs right now. Okay. The Seattle Storm, last year they made the playoffs. All right. So their odds, even though they have the worst record in the league, they do have a decent year from last year. Connecticut didn't make the playoffs last year. They're going to have a ton of ping pong balls. Toronto and Portland just go off of 1 year since they don't have a second year. So they're going to be, and then Chicago was awful last year as well. They're going to have a lot of ping pong balls. So that pick, they're probably going to have, and this is where I think Phoenix's logic comes in. Phoenix was probably looking at it because there's no guarantee they re-sign Kelsey Plum. And to be clear, if they don't, that's a disastrous trade. Okay, it's a disastrous trade because you've given up what's going to be a lottery pick for 2 months of a player who's not. No matter how well she plays, you're almost certainly not getting to the playoffs. But I think Phoenix's logic was this: they want Plum long term. They know they have a better chance to re-sign her if they bring her into their franchise, expose her for 2 months to what it's like to be on the Mercury. The Mercury experience with the amenities and the attention that's paid under this ownership group is next level. And anybody who goes there, I think, is going to have a really enjoyable experience. And so they're looking at that and they're thinking, okay, we have 2 months of essentially getting to recruit Kelsey. And then if you look at the lottery odds, even though Phoenix knows they're unlikely to make the playoffs this year, I just broke down for you how they're also probably not going to have the first most ping pong balls, the second most ping pong balls, the third most ping pong balls, the fourth most ping pong balls. And they're probably not going to have the fifth or sixth, too. So they're probably going to have the seventh most ping pong balls, which would be last of all the lottery teams, which would
Got it.
mean they would have the lowest odds to get that top pick. If you look at the draft, and I know I'm really getting granular here, but we need some of this in the W, okay, Jordan?
We do.
But if you,
All
right,
of it
we
matters.
need to, we do this stuff in the NBA all the time, right?
All
Like
the time.
if you look at the lottery, now this is an incredible draft, but it's especially talented at the top, right? With Juju, if she comes out, with Madison Booker, with Hannah Hidalgo, with Michaela Williams. And I think if you're Phoenix, you're probably looking at it and you're saying, you know what? Our odds of getting into the top 4 are not great enough for me to not want to take that 2-month recruiting chance at Kelsey. And so I think that's why Phoenix does it. It's a risk. I don't know that I would have done it because I think they would have had a shot at Kelsey anyway, but they're trying to increase their odds of keeping Plum. And they're saying, you know what? The 5th, 6th, or 7th pick in the draft isn't worth me losing out on this golden recruiting opportunity for Plum. And that's why they do the deal. So I understand the logic for Phoenix, and I think for LA, no brainer.
That is such a great breakdown because I think for Phoenix too, the other caveat, holding on to that draft pick, you're not really in a rebuild. Like you have Alyssa Thomas, Kalia Copper, Dewana Bonner towards, the end of her career. This is just a shock to the system that you guys were this bad this season. But that wasn't the plan. That was not the plan.
Very true.
So if you're holding on to this lottery pick, even if you were going to get a top pick, that wasn't the plan to, okay, we're in a rebuild and we are going to build around this future superstar. It was like, no, we're kind of in win now. We're not winning now in the win now mode.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Part, so getting Kelsey fits more of the Mercury plan of like, yeah, we're trying to get back to the finals. And Kelsey Plum would get us there a lot sooner than whatever lottery pick that we get. For the Sparks, that's the frustration that I feel because it didn't feel like these past couple years it was really a rebuild per se. Getting Kelsey Plum was that piece that was going to kind of accelerate the plan that you were building with Cameron Brink and Rakia Jackson and Ray Burrell. Like, look at this young core that's going to be potential. And then you're getting rid of that piece. So now you're in rebuild again. And here we go, pressing reset once again. You do have a chance to get some young talent. But I'm like, do we trust you? Are you going to keep them? Are you going to stay in it for a little longer?
That's a legitimate question. No, Jordan, that is a legitimate question. And I think that's something, look, LA as an organization has to do better, period. I mean, they have not, when you look at from the Candace departure to NECA's departure to even the Rakia trade, I know it, Ariel Atkins has had a wonderful career. Like that has not worked out. She struggled this year for LA. There's no doubt they need to get their timeline right and cohesive. And they certainly have left a lot to be desired when it comes to their, front office structure and decisions. I still won't. I still don't feel like we've gotten to see Lynn Roberts with like a full roster to show how she actually wants to run her team. I loved watching her coach in Utah. I would love to see Lynn get a team that she can go do her thing with. I also feel for NECA because it felt so poetic going back there. And I thought they were going into the year. I thought they had a chance to be a real contender. But you've gotten some down performances from where you expected, some injuries, and then a little short on the roster. So yeah, they have to shift now and be like, okay, we can't shortcut this. Like, you need to nail these picks. Who knows? I mean, can you imagine if they got the first pick and they had Juju in LA? Like, that would be
Cameron, I can't
yeah,
even think about it. That is their only saving grace, honestly. If Juju
yes.
Watkins is in a Sparks uniform, all will be forgiven.
Yeah.
Everyone in the whole city will forgive all of the transgressions that the Sparks have
Yes.
put the Sparks
Yes.
fans through for these
It's
past
so true.
10 years since they won a
Yes.
title. It has been dismal things
Yeah.
to hold on to. But Juju Watkins staying home, now that I can get on board
That
with.
would, yeah, you could get on board with that for sure. There's a lot of teams that want to
Otherwise,
get on board with that.
I know.
Yeah.
All the Connecticut Sun fans making the move to Houston are like,
Yeah.
we've been in
Yeah.
this a long time too. We're getting that too. So
Yeah.
I can't wait for us to do this pod in 6 months from now, me and you, and we can really grade this trade.
Yeah.
Just like at another time, I want to go back and grade the Kelsey Plum, Jewel Lloyd, that 3-team
Oh,
trade. Like,
yeah.
that kind of
Yeah.
goes back to that. Did that actually work out? What the Sparks had to give up to bring
Not for
Kelsey
LA.
here?
Yeah.
No,
No. Yeah.
no.
No.
You are
Yeah.
still on the short end of the stick from going back to there. So,
Yes.
yes.
Because that pick
Sparks.
became Awa Fam. Like, that was the 3-team trade with Seattle. That pick becomes Awa Fam. How much better would you feel if you had Awa Fam on your team and you were going into this draft thinking, oh, could I add a Hannah Hidalgo or a Juju to Awa? Yeah. But I understand at the moment I understood it though too, because you're like, oh, we're trying to turn the page. We can get an all W player, a champion like Plum in the door. And that's the other thing is like Kelsey's awesome. She's also just one of my favorite people in the league. I love Kelsey
Yeah,
Plum.
me too.
But yeah, she's so cool. But I do think with a full season, if she stays in Phoenix, then look out next year.
Right.
So and that's what they're banking on, right? They're banking on she's gonna love it. We're gonna woo her, she's gonna stay, and the deal will have been worth it. And they're gonna say, and if we didn't make the deal, yeah, maybe we would have had that pick and we could have just signed her outright. Or maybe someone else, some other organization would have wooed her and we wouldn't have had that inherent advantage of having her in our building for 2 months.
With her close friends. Like, that also is a
Yeah.
very key part. Like, that Ka and her are really tight.
Yeah.
The next question I'm going to ask Kelsey Plum, which is what I did when she moved to LA, is she going to find someone to do her eyebrows? Because Kelsey Plum has the best eyebrows in the entire WNBA. And now she has to find another place to match that in Phoenix.
Oh, I love
Good
that.
luck.
That is so good. I almost want to like text her right now and be like,
Yes.
hey, question. Like,
Tell her
could
Jordan is asking again
Yeah,
about
exactly.
your eyebrow person.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
before
will.
we go,
Yeah.
the fun thing that I love that we do, we can do this kind of quicker, but
Yeah.
we talk about on this girls trip teams that are running on a full tank of gas or teams that are running on E. And as we are inching towards the playoff picture, I'm so curious who these teams are. Besides the teams that we've talked a lot about today, what is a team that has a full tank of gas right now in this pivotal point? Because August, it's a crucial month.
Obviously Minnesota does, like we talked about. Indiana does, despite the loss Sunday, like we talked about. Another team that I think has a full tank of gas is Golden State. If you look at Golden State, my concern for them in the playoffs would be, can you score enough to win? You're not a great offensive team. Can you score enough to win? That would be my concern, and I'd have some doubts about whether or not, that turns out to be a fatal flaw. But they're, they're really good. They're 21-9. They're so good defensively. They play so hard. They have more offense this year than they did last year. That and they seemingly are showing no signs of stopping. They've beaten good teams all year.
Yeah.
They really give Indiana fits. I know they've beaten Toronto a ton recently, but the beginning of July, end of June, it was beating the Liberty. It was beating Atlanta twice, or three
Mm-hmm.
times. I, I look at them, I say that's a team that has a full tank of gas, despite the fact that Natalie Nakase has them empty that tank every time they play, just in
Every time.
their style. But they got a full tank. They're interesting to me, Jordan. They have just enough 3-point shooting too to be
Hmm.
dangerous offensively, despite not having a ton of players who you give the ball to and say, go get a bucket. Yeah, I think I'm a believer that anything's possible for the Golden State Valkyries this year. They
Me
have a
too.
full tank. Yeah.
Me too. I am going to my first Valkyries game. I'm going to Valhalla in a couple weeks, and I am so excited. I'm
You're
so
going to
excited.
love
I'm
it.
going for Lynx when they play the Lynx. Like, that's incredible. My dad was like, "I don't care what you're doing. We're going. We're flying you up to Sacramento. We're gonna drive over together." So I'm so
How
excited about
awesome
that.
is that? That's
Oh,
amazing.
it's gonna be
Yeah.
fun. My mom has already planned her outfit since All Star
Oh, I
Weekend.
love it.
She is a super duper fan, so I love this. Can't wait to tell you guys all about it. I love Golden State. I'm going Washington Mystics here because you said it. You mentioned it earlier. Full tank of gas. They are 8-3 over the last 11 games, 4-game winning streak, and they're sneaky because again, these are one of the youngest teams in the league. No one really expected them to be up this high, but they're kind of the best of that, middle to bottom tier of the standings. And they have a 6-game homestand coming up. They could really boost even more up the standings, but they've already climbed from 9th to 7th. They beat some of the top teams, especially in
Yeah.
close games. And they're also so fun to watch. Like one of those league pass teams that you see the growth from the start of the year to now. I love the Mystics. So I think they're on a full tank and they have a lot of confidence right now in the season.
You know what? I love that because you're right. They have had some really good wins too. Like they
Yes.
beat the Aces, they beat the Valkyries, they beat the Wings, just all in the last couple weeks.
Hmm.
I like that pick. I like that pick,
Yeah.
Jordan. I think,
Thank you.
and and I just love the way Washington has built their team. Like they may not be contenders this year, like, with this young team going to the playoffs, first time with this group, yada yada. But look out for the very near future. And remember,
Yes.
they also have Chicago's pick. So they could end up with the number one pick in the draft.
Oh
So
my God. They
yeah,
could.
yeah.
Oh, wow. Wow.
Yeah.
Also, Elena Deldon, she looked real good in that Shooting Stars competition, and she did not say no
She didn't
about
say no.
coming out of retirement. So, hey, I think she would go to Washington. Just add her
It'd
onto
be
that. That would be pretty nice.
imagine she goes into the Hall of Fame, the later this summer, early fall, and then comes out of retirement to join one of these teams. But you telling me like
Incredible.
EDD couldn't be like a stretch four, give you like 10 to 15 minutes a night? Like, come on.
I mean,
Mm.
I would want that. I would
Yeah.
watch that. I would cheer for that, and I'm sure the Mystics would love it too if she was able to do that.
Little story on Elena Delle Donne. When I first started doing the W, 2013, her rookie year, and she was the first player for me calling games where I was just like, I can't wait to do my next EDD game. Like I am just because
Oh,
just the way she moves, the way she shoots, I was just like, oh my gosh.
I
And
love her.
getting to broadcast her games was one of the hooks that made me fall in love with calling games for this league. Just watching
Hmm.
her play. LaChina Robinson and I talk about it all the time because EDD was her favorite player to watch and call games for, and I miss it. Like I always think about her and Maya. You know, Elena gave us a little more time, but I'm like, my gosh, we could still be
We're
watching Maya. We
shortchanged.
missed.
I
Oh my
know.
gosh, we were so
Ryan, don't bring it
shortchanged.
up. I'm gonna
I
cry.
know. I
Don't
know.
bring it up. And watching
Oh,
EDD's shooting form in that Shooting Stars
yes.
competition was
Oh,
such a tease. It was
oh,
it was wonderful to watch, but it was also painful. Like I should still be watching this on prime time.
totally. Couldn't agree more. Couldn't
Okay,
agree more.
I can't go there. I can't go there. Let's talk about, as we wrap, the teams that are on E that
Yeah.
maybe need to stop over at a gas station soon, or they're gonna break down on the side of the road.
You know, Toronto's on E at this point, I
Yeah.
think. They've lost 7 in a row. They look like a spunky team that could potentially make the playoffs earlier in the year. They are not going to be a playoff team, and they've really struggled of late. But I say that to say they are on E. Like they've started to, lose a lot of games by quite a bit recently, right? I think, their last game they lost by 11 to Golden State. Before that, it was 17. Then it was, 30 to Minnesota. That, there's a lot of games like Vegas beat them by like 25 or 26. But I also will say this is where they should be. You know, we talked about how historic this draft class is. Obviously, Brittany Sykes has dealt with injury this year. Marina Mabry's had a great year. You know, they need a franchise pillar around those players. And their best way to get it is going to be through the draft. And so, even
Mhm.
though they're on E for this season, I think them pulling over to get some gas is happening in the draft, and this is helping them get there. So they're on the right detour for
You're
the gas
right.
station. It's not for this year's road, it's for next year's road. Because it's hard to say like, well, don't compete, but like if they were to make the playoffs this year, you're kind of, you're hurting yourself for next year. And if they end
Yeah.
up with the worst record in the league this year, because they're only on a 1 year, um, you know,
Mm.
give only a 1 year, they'd end up with the most ping pong balls, like so. Um, so if I'm them, I'm embracing being on E.
I am right there with you. I'm putting the Portland Fire in there too. I said that
Yeah.
the Tempo and the Fire are putting the E in expansion teams for this go around. And here's the thing though. Like you said, this is where they're supposed to be, and I think the Valkyries last year have kind of contorted our minds to think that expansion
Very
teams should be
much. Great
successful
point.
right
Yeah.
away. The Valkyries are the anomaly, and they still them in year 2 being in this top 3 spot is rare. That has never happened before. So this is
Yeah.
where the expansion teams in year 1, even being kind of at the top of the bottom, is good for them. Otherwise, you are exactly where you need to be. This is what's happened to expansion teams in the past. They get a really good draft pick and then they start building from there. Otherwise, don't compare yourself to the Valkyries, which we all were comparing you to because of that season that they had last year, because of Valhalla, because of the branding, because of everything. Everyone's comparing themselves to the Valkyries, but you kind of can't. You got to stay in your own lane. You mentioned Brittany Sykes for the Tempo. I think this is a different season if she's healthy the whole time
Definitely.
because she
Definitely.
was all-star numbers at the beginning of the year. For Portland, Sarah Ashley Barker goes down with an ACL. Carla Late is balling out of control, but you still need some more pieces. Like you're not complete yet, and no one is expecting you to be complete right now. So you're kind of where you need to be. You are running on E. let's pull over. Put the blinker on. Let's pull over. Let's get some gas. It's at the draft, and then you'll be good.
I think that's a perfect breakdown, Jordan, and you are right. And I like that line. The E in expansion. That's spot on. Spot
Thank
on.
you. Thank you so
You
much.
got it.
All right. Well, this was so fun. What do you have coming up? What trips are you going
so
on?
we got a lot going on, Jordan. Oh my gosh. Our schedule the next few weeks, we have fun, awesome games. So we have Fever Sky from the United Center on ABC Saturday.
Ooh.
Then we have
Okay.
Liberty Aces on Sunday on ABC. So I'm doing, Rebecca and I and Holly are doing both those games back to back Saturday, Sunday, which would be awesome. Then we have Fever Liberty in Indiana next week, Tuesday. So that's all just in the next, however many days. And then we have the Dream and the Fever the following weekend on ABC. So we got big games coming up, like big games. Yeah.
I remember at one point at the early in the season, you're like, yeah, we're not on till June. We're cruising, and not anymore. They're ramping you up.
The tables have turned. Yes, yeah. The tables have turned, but it's all good.
All good. Those are really good games. I will be watching them. I'm sure all of our listeners will be watching, and we'll just be waiting for a You Bet. Hopefully those are some good You Bet games. But thank you so much, Ryan. Thanks for going on this trip with me. This was so fun.
You got it, Jordan. Thanks for having me as always.